I'm really delighted to be here today, to be in Melbourne, Australia. We've been doing a little bit of a world tour between India, Singapore, and now in Melbourne. I'm very, very excited about the energy here. So just to get started, do I have a good clicker going? Where's my tech support? How many IT people does it take to do a presentation? Here he comes, my controller. Yeah, we're not clicking.
That's your clicker, yeah? That's your one, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you plug it in?
No, but yeah, no, it's Bluetooth.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not working. Yeah.
Nope.
No. Okay.
See, we're not showing my screen.
Okay.
So while we're waiting, let me tell you a little bit about me and tell you a little bit about the DevOps Institute, and then give you just a little preview about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm Jayne Groll. I'm CEO of the DevOps Institute. I have a pretty long career in IT. I was an IT director for many, many, many years. I was also very involved in the ITIL ITSM space for about 15 years. And then in 2012, I was very much delighted to be introduced to DevOps in its early days. I went to one of the early DevOps days in Mountain View, California with a name you may know, a guy by the name of Gene Kim. And then several years later, we founded the DevOps Institute, recognizing that DevOps is very different than other frameworks because DevOps is very inclusive. So it's not, is it ITIL, is it Agile, is it IT for IT, is it Lean, is it COBOT? DevOps is very much an inclusive movement that embraces all of that. So founded the DevOps Institute as a member association, and with the intent of equipping the human elements of DevOps. We talk a lot about organizational elements. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go forward. So our mission is really based on a framework of skills, knowledge, ideas, and learning. We consider that the same type of elements as earth, wind, fire, water, right? Take one away and the human doesn't thrive. And again, I'll have an opportunity to tell you more about how DevOps Institute makes know-how of DevOps possible. So let's start our story here. If you've been in IT for more than, say, 5, 10 years, you probably know that IT is a system of systems, right? So we grew IT up, and I said I've been in IT a long time. So we grew IT up as an organization of specialists, and each team within our organization of specialists really grew their own system. So how many of you are software developers? How many of you would consider yourself site reliability engineers or operations? Okay, so probably a fairly healthy division between the two. Well, if you're a software developer, it's likely that today you're doing agile software development. And so you have your own vocabulary, you have your own ways of working, you have your own teams, 2 pizzas, things like that, right? And once it leaves the Scrum team and goes downstream, there's a whole new system. Call it continuous delivery, continuous integration, continuous deployment, continuous anything. If you're from the ITIL community, you might see service design and service transition, but that had its own set of tools, it had its own set of vocabulary, it was a separate system. And then when the product goes into production, right, either the button gets pressed or presses itself, there's another system. Today, we're starting to evolve towards site reliability engineering, but historically, it's incident management, problem management, operational tasks, and things like that. And again, a different system. Well, if we're really going to make DevOps a reality, and by the way, how many of you are concerned about the definition of DevOps? Like, what is it? Maybe a little bit, right? I'm going to tell you what it is. It's new IT. Right? DevOps is new IT, and it encompasses the entire end-to-end system. That's why there's such a healthy focus on the value stream, because we are all part of the value stream. So please, let's not go into this thinking that DevOps is another framework. It's not. It really is all of IT. I like to call it new IT. Right? If you're as old as me, you would know the term new math. Right? So this is new IT, and it is a new paradigm that requires that we see this as a whole. And you play a part, regardless of your role, somewhere in this whole. Well, if we're going to have systems thinking, we have to have systems thinking professionals. Have you been hearing a lot about this concept of a T-shaped professional? Anybody hearing about T-shaping? If you haven't, I'm going to tell you about it today. So as I said, we've grown IT up to be this organization of specialists. You may be a software engineer, you may be an infrastructure engineer, you may be a security professional, you know, on and on and on and on. And that's your core competency. That's the stem of your T, right? So everyone in this room has the stem of their T. That's your deep knowledge, right? It's likely the way you identify in your career. Well, today that's not enough. Today, you have to fill the top of your T with a broad set of skills. Now, we're going to talk about what skills, right? But test-driven development is a T-shaped role, right? Is a T-shaped capability. My daughter's an artist, and I tell this story a lot. She's a painter. And she'll tell you that while painting is her core competency, she needs to know a little bit about clay. She needs to know a little bit about metal. She needs to know a little bit about other mediums to make her painting come to life, right? You are artists. You are craftspeople, right? You need to know enough about other mediums or other domains in order to be a systems thinker. Everybody with me so far, right? We have to be T-shaped people. Then if you develop more than one competency, you can move on to be pie-shaped or comb-shaped or M-shaped or what other of a shape. But for today, let's assume that all of you either are or going to be T-shaped professionals because they are the most hireable people globally, okay? So I want you to think a little bit about how would you fill the top of your T, right? Broad base of knowledge. So in 2018, the DevOps Institute fielded a global research project where we reached into the community with a very, very deep survey and said, what are the skills that are considered must-have, nice-to-have, or not important in a DevOps environment, right? And so we had about 1,600 individuals respond. It was about a 30-minute survey, so you have to think that's pretty, you know, that's really a coalition of the willing. And if you look at the geographical spread on the response to the survey, not unexpectedly, North America and Europe came in, you know, the top two in terms of number of respondents. About 8% from Asia Pac, 17% from India. China had a hard time getting to the survey based on what we know, and we're seeing more of the emergence. Well, again, you all know, there obviously are some firewall issues there, but Latin America is an emerging market. We saw about 8%. And we did this in collaboration with a woman by the name of Evelyn Orlick. Some of you may know her from her days at Forrester. She was a vice president at Forrester for about 12 years, now working with us as our chief research analyst. And so she crafted the survey and also produced the report. The report is very, very, very deep. And I'm going to invite you to download the report for free by going to the DevOps Institute website. It's 48 pages, a lot of pictures, right? But it really does tell you a lot about the benchmark of where we are today in terms of DevOps skills. So again, when we start to look at who responded to the survey, about 11% of the respondents said they were planning to adopt, and about 19% said they were at enterprise adoption. So there's a pretty big span there, right? About 43% are experimenting on a project level. So that tells us that our DevOps value of experimentation about trying to figure out which applications, which products, which teams would be most likely to start using DevOps practices, about 43% were at the project level. Just so you know, of the 1,600 respondents, about 61% came from companies over 500 employees. About 24% were over 20,000 employees. So we feel like we got a pretty healthy data sample in terms of really what the enterprise is looking for. When we look at the topologies, right, about 24% were looking at cross-functional teams distributed among different teams. We heard some of that this morning, right? We heard where organizations are starting to build these cross-functional teams that are delivering the knowledge and the immersion to other teams. And then, you know, if you look at about 10% are setting up a dedicated central DevOps teams, we're really not supportive of that. You know, I tell everybody, please don't set up a DMO, right? A DevOps management office, right? Like we had PMOs and SMOs. Really, it's just creating another silo. So if you start to look at, again, across the respondents on a project-by-project basis via DevOps service team, about 22% came in there, and about 19% came in as an add-on responsibility of different members, which was very ad hoc. And given what we know about the maturity of the DevOps market, particularly at the enterprise level, that's what we would have expected, right? That's exactly what we would have expected. So the key takeaways from the report, and I'll dive a little bit deeper during the time I have with you today, there were 3 must-have skill categories. Now, this is really fascinating because automation, process, and soft skills statistically came out equal. So you would have expected automation, right? You might have expected process, but look at soft skills. And we're going to take a little look at what soft skills, but if you get any message here, it's start polishing your soft skills, because they are very, very, very important. Automation makes DevOps a success, but process skills are necessary for intelligent automation. So automation for automation's sake, right, is not what's desirable. It's really having that underpinning understanding of process. Soft skills and technical skills are equally important. The next one was pretty interesting because of the 1,600 respondents, about half were developers and about half were operations. Now remember, they self-identified, so we can't validate that. But again, if we look at the spread across the regions, we had about half and half. Security and operations really came out as key functional skills. Business skills are most important to leaders. Practitioners were a little unsure about the value of business skills. What did that mean in terms of being a must-have skill? Vertical skills are important, but only in certain industries. So healthcare, manufacturing might have said it would be really nice to have the vertical understanding of that kind of market, but it didn't rise up as being important. But look at the blue text. Hiring from within is the most predominant thinking. So while we know there's a big skills gap, and we know, I'll show you the next slide, 37% are hiring, right? We know that. Most organizations would prefer to grow their internal teams than to bring in talent from the outside. So a good starting place. Now, this is kind of interesting. We did a little bit of a breakdown based on role. And again, remember, these are roles that are self-identified. So the C-suite made up about 6%, the management layer made up about 25%, and then the rest were the individual contributors. So you can see where process automation and soft skills really kind of, again, kind of emerged as being very, very important to the C-suite, particularly when we got to automation and soft skills. The practitioners, there's a pretty healthy spread from automation skills where the C-suite says must have 71% and the practitioner said 56%. We think it may be a misunderstanding of which automation skills, right? There's a really healthy range of what that means, right? Look at soft skills. 69% of the C-suite felt that soft skills were a must-have, 44% of the individual contributor. And again, when we start to look at a little bit deeper at the data, maybe that will make some sense to you. Specific automation didn't rise up really among any of the 3 categories. And again, I mentioned about business skills, 43% of the C-suite said it was must-have, but only 22% of the individual contributor. So there may be a disconnect in terms of what the C-suite, right? And the C-suite here is defined as really CIO, CTO, right? Really at the very, very highest level. The management layer are vice presidents, directors, managers, anyone that's leading officially from an HR perspective, and then the individual contributor. So again, some interesting agreement and confusion between the 3 layers. So let's kind of climb down this mountain to see which of these skills, those are very broad categories, which of these skills really emerged as must-haves compared to, say, nice to have. So in process skills, remember, half the respondents were developers and half the respondents were operations. Software development lifecycle, number 1. All right, so whether you're operations or whether you're development, security, or anywhere in between, you have to have a healthy understanding of the software development lifecycle. It doesn't say which one. Right? You need to understand how software is created and how it's delivered and how it's operated throughout its life cycle. Process flow and analysis was really pretty interesting too, because it didn't say which process methodology, right? So it didn't say agile or ITIL. In fact, if you look at the results here, the top half, systems thinking all the way to the top, were higher level critical thinking skills, but not married to a particular framework, right? The bottom half is where you saw the specific frameworks. So we think what the respondents are telling us is that we want people who have higher level critical thinking skills, and then we can make the best of best practices, right? So even though, say, ITIL or project management or program management or Scrum didn't come out as essentially must-have skills, they're really healthy in the nice-to-haves, right? But the key must-have skills were from systems thinking up. So you need to understand about test-driven development. You need to understand about agile. You need to understand about source control and process flow, and how you apply that may be associated with a particular framework or set of practices. Make sense? So when we look at soft skills, right, it's a really clear message. Now remember, we have practitioners, we have management layer, we have C-suite. Collaboration and cooperation, problem solving, interpersonal skills, sharing and knowledge, flexibility and adaptability, and personal values really right up there, right? And those are not soft and fluffy, right? There's a really big difference between people that are good communicators and people that are good collaborators. And it isn't just that we're sitting side by side, right? In communication, I tell you something and you tell me something. Could be via email, could be through chat, could be through whatever. In collaboration, I ask your opinion, right? So being a good collaborator is more than working together. It's sharing knowledge, it's sharing expertise, and it's respecting other people's knowledge and expertise. So that rose up as number one, right? We work our way down. Customer experience skills are kind of interesting, right? Where if you go into the survey, you'll see that customer experience skills very, very high at the C level, not so high on the practitioner level. And again, you know, I can't climb into the heads of the people that responded, but I can tell you that I think the practitioners don't understand what specific skills are associated with customer experience, where the C-suite and the management layer has a pretty clear vision of that. So that's just my interpretation, but there is a pretty healthy point spread between the two. And then you work your way all the way down to risk-taking. Again, can't be as much of a must-have, but certainly a nice-to-have, and you know, you can work your way all the way down from there. So again, I think that when we start to look at it as kind of a, you know, climbing down the mountain, it's pretty clear what soft skills need to be polished, including empathy, as we start to work our way down. Functional skills. Now remember, software development lifecycle came out number one in process skills. We got to functional skills, operations knowledge, right? Whether it was infrastructure, operations, or security, really rose up as the top three. So again, if you're looking to fill the top of your T, right, I would say, first of all, security and testing are really two areas that are in very, very high demand, particularly in a multi-dimensional T-shaped professional. So if you don't have a lot of knowledge about security practices, DevSecOps is on the rise, then that's something that maybe you want to learn a little bit about. Again, you don't have to become an expert, but you need to have just enough, right? Just enough knowledge to be able to do that. Same thing with infrastructure and operations. I think it was Shlomi this morning that said, you know, we have to look at what we're pushing to the developers when we're starting to shift things left. And so if you're a developer and you're not having some general knowledge about operations or infrastructure, I certainly would encourage you to build that with security as well. And then you kind of work your way down. You know what's really fascinating? Look at the bottom, right? Governance, risk, and audit. I would tell you 10 years ago, GRC, now, it's not that it's not important. Please do not ever misunderstand that regulations and GRC are very, very important. But I think how we're managing compliance in the cloud, how we're starting to produce evidence is probably a little different than it was several years ago. And so it's not emerging as a must-have, but certainly as a nice-to-have. 19% said not important. So it'll be interesting to see. This will be a year-over-year project. See what next year shows. And then when we get to technical skills, cloud, right? I mean, cloud, including hybrid, right? But certainly if you don't have any knowledge of basic cloud platforms, I think that's really important. But next up was analytical knowledge, right? The ability to analyze what's going on, to be able to look at machine learning, to be able to look at analytics generally. And then, again, you can work your way through. Fascinating was big data and artificial intelligence. They didn't rise up as must-have, particularly AI. And again, from an interpretation, we think that there just isn't enough to say it has to be a must-have. But certainly on the nice-to-have, there's certainly some growth there. Same thing on big data, right? Mobile environments was kind of interesting too, because I would tell you 5 years ago that would have been much higher. And that's certainly on a drop as well. So part of the questions that were asked are, which roles are you hiring? And so the DevOps Engineer, DevOps Manager, number one, right? There is no standard definition yet for a DevOps Engineer. How many of you would self-identify as a DevOps Engineer? It's okay, you can raise your hand, right? It's a safe zone. We think that over time there will be a few more standards associated with that so that when you market yourself as a DevOps Engineer, there will be some logic or some sanity that says this is what you are, because there's people out there that maybe don't have the same skill as you that are self-declaring themselves as DevOps engineers as well. But it is, whether we like it or not, it is the number one title, right? Software engineer, not a surprise, DevOps consultant, right? We're seeing the rise of the DevOps coach and also taking some steps. To Jennifer's point this morning, site reliability engineering is starting to show up as a very, very hireable skill. And we know in the US in particular, SREs are being hired by the hundreds, by many, many companies. And then you still see some older roles like systems administrator. And it'll be interesting to see next year whether systems administrator goes down and site reliability engineers go up, whether there's a marriage of operations and really truly SRE, as Jennifer described this morning. There's testing again, right? So again, if I could emphasize a couple of skills, I would tell you testing and security, really top of the T, right? If you're looking to fill your T, I think that's very, very good, including some of those key soft skills. So some other practices that are trending, I think Jennifer did a really great job this morning giving an overview of what is site reliability engineering. It's a bit of a passion project for me. DevOps Institute will be introducing some content around that throughout the year. Test engineering, DevSecOps, anybody security? Have any security folks here? Yeah, DevSecOps is like crazy. My business partner, Alan Schimmel, was at RSA in the US a couple of weeks ago. They do a DevSecOps days. 1,000 people walked in that room, literally 1,000 people. So we know that this is very much on the rise. And we know that people didn't like the term, right? Was it SecDevOps? Was it DevSecOps? Was it rugged? I think the term has been settled on, but who cares, right? Who cares? It really is the involvement, the integration of security. Security as code, security is everybody's responsibility. So again, top of the T, develop some basic security skills, particularly looking at DevSecOps. Microservice architectures, how many of you are working in a microservice environment? Okay, not unexpectedly, there are a lot of legacy organizations that are really struggling with how do they take their big monolithic applications and start to break them down into microservices. Of course, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with Kubernetes and containers, but there's a lot of organizations out there that are really trying to wrap their heads around containers, right? How do we operate in a container environment, particularly those that are either hybrid or really still looking at on-prem. You notice I missed value stream mapping, right? So anybody ever do a value stream mapping exercise? Fantastic, right? The only technology you need to do a value stream map is a bunch of sticky notes and a skilled facilitator, right? You take a big wall, you bring in a bunch of very engaged people from different perspectives, and you start to map how you create value. That's not the cool part, right? It's not a flow chart. It's not a flow chart. It is all of these activities we do, how long it takes, how much time is between each activity, right? So when you're looking to go faster, sometimes it isn't reducing the time of the activity. You can accomplish that with automation. You can accomplish that a lot of ways. How long is it taking till you get to the next activity? Right? It's a really great social experiment. And so again, I would encourage you to learn more about value stream mapping. If you're at the beginning of your DevOps journey, this is where you start. Because how do you know how you deliver value if you haven't really created some kind of common understanding about it? It comes out of the lean community. So again, remember I said DevOps embraces many, many other types of practices, and this one comes from lean. So just to wrap up, a couple of really key takeaways came from the report, and I said this will be a year over year, so this year it's a benchmark, right? This year we asked the community what skills are considered must-have, nice-to-have, and not important. Next year, we may get validation. We may see some emerging trends, right? We may see some things that are the same. We may see some things that are different. But this year, it really came out that ops, right, development, security, quality, and testing together really make up DevOps. So regardless of where you sit in the value stream, you are DevOps. Right? Regardless of whether you like ITIL or Agile or Scrum or Lean or IT for IT or pick any of, IT, we love our frameworks, right? It doesn't matter, you are DevOps, right? We are all engineers and you are all DevOps. Critical thinking skills are more important than specific frameworks. We saw that very, very clearly when we looked at the processes. And again, I encourage you to download the whole report, but it really did demonstrate that the organization wants humans. We use the term human because we are all human, right? So they want humans because humans can do things that at least today machines can't do, right? We're looking at AI, we're looking at machine learning. Only humans, right? Only humans today can be as innovative, can have those critical thinking skills. Polish your soft skills. Right? But while you're polishing your soft skills, don't underestimate the need for automation. So remember, automation isn't a specific tool. Automation is really systems thinking. And again, I think it was Shlomi this morning that said best of breed, right? So build it the way that makes sense, but understand the best practices associated with this. Companies are cultivating their DevOps teams from within, and then be expandable. I've been in IT a long time. I'm an accidental technologist. This was not the path I was going on when I started. It is no better day than today to be in IT. Where else do you have a job where you are required to learn every single day, where you are required to learn from your colleagues, you're required to learn in any method that's possible, that you are required to be disruptive and to be innovative and to be a high-level thinker. So once in a while, you got to stop and count your blessings and understand that, no other day than today is it better to be in IT. So I encourage you to download the report. You can get it from the DevOps Institute. I said it's pretty deep data. Very blessed that we had some good support from Electric Cloud, Cloudbees, and Lenovo in producing this. And then join the DevOps Institute Association. We're introducing a skills framework that really looks at certification as your career growth, but also looks at the other elements of the human aspect of DevOps, right? We know culture is an important part of DevOps. And so we're introducing more knowledge like the report, opportunities to share ideas, and then continuous learning in the form of micro-learning and know-how. So go to the website, become a free member. We are a very open community. Stop by the table, get a pair of socks. Anyhow, thank you.